Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, students, whenever you're watching this. This is the very first lecture for AP Macroeconomics over what I refer to as the fundamentals of economics. A bunch of very core, basic principles that are sort of underlying throughout everything we talk about. This serves as sort of an introduction to a lot of the vocabulary of the course. It also acts as a way to introduce you to sort of three big topics that get kind of glossed through in Unit 1 that I think are worth emphasizing a little bit more clearly. Those three topics are the factors of production, the circular flow model, and opportunity cost. Those three things are sort of the three key things of today's lecture. We're going to go through each of those in depth and hopefully address any confusion or issues you might have had with any of these, namely the circular flow models where students tend to have the most trouble. But that being said, let's get into it. So here's your first example of very basic economic stuff. Price and cost. Two words that I'm sure you know what they mean in a contextual manner, but there are specific definitions. The price of a good is how much the consumer pays for it. The cost is how much the seller pays to produce a good. That's important to know because if you ever hear the phrase like input cost, it's the cost of an input being a resource. That's specifically for a producer. So it's how much the resource costs. Got it. That matters because it's part of their production and it's how much they're going to actually have to spend in order to pay for things. So think of price as just our level paying for stuff and cost as the producer level paying for stuff. And, I put this in the very beginning because this is a word that comes up a lot in economics where students think they have an idea of what it means, but it means something else in this course. The word investment. The tricky part here is that students for the most part will believe that investment has to do with things like the stock market and real estate and putting money into an account to make you money in the long term. That's not wrong in like the real world. But in this class it is. Investment in economics, specifically in macro, is money spent by businesses to improve their production. So whenever you've heard the phrase like investing in yourself, they're kind of referencing this definition here. So investment spending is when businesses spend to improve their own production. This is usually on like capital, which is a word we'll talk about here in a second. This could be on a new computer, new factory, etc. Goods and services. This one I'm not too concerned about. Goods, objects that satisfy needs and wants. I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller so you can see all the text. Yeah, there we go. But there are two different types of goods you should be aware of. There are consumer goods, goods that are just instantly used up, direct consumption. I buy the thing, it is used, it is gone. Food, obviously, is a consumer good. Paper, also a consumer good. Oil, consumer good. A capital good, which is also referencing the word capital that I just mentioned, is a good created for indirect consumption, a good usually used to help then produce other goods. Basically, if you walk into the kitchen, all of your appliances in your kitchen would be a capital good. It's a good used to perform a service or used to make other goods. So your phone would be a capital good. You don't just buy the phone, make a call, and then it explodes. That would be insane. Also dangerous. It has repeated use, it has multiple levels of utility, is a good way to think about it. Services, actions, or activities that one person performs for another. Now, here is a quick little tangent into real-world economic stuff. You're like, boring definitions, Mr. McRitchie, I don't care. Okay, well, here's why this matters. If you're looking at a timeline of America and America's economy the last 70 to 80 years or so, one of the biggest things that's happened for us is a transition from a goods-based economy to a services-based economy. What that means is we don't make a lot of other stuff anymore. Right? You guys should be aware of that because you buy goods, you see they're made in China or Taiwan or wherever. They're not made here, right? Yeah, it's because we're not a goods-based economy anymore. It's not as profitable for us to make goods. It's more worthwhile for us to provide services. Think all the careers you guys want, right? Very few people in AP classes in high school are like, I want to go work as a laborer in a factory. No, you guys want to be like a nurse or a doctor, or you want to go into a service, or you want to own a business. You don't want to be the low end, you want to be the high end. Cool. Those are all services that you're describing. So, congratulations. You're helping sort of fulfill the fact that America is a service-based economy now. Goods-based economies can still be successful. Again, America was a goods-based economy, probably all the way up and through the 60s. China is presently a goods-based economy. But it's important when you're comparing goods-based versus services-based that they are not competing in the same field as you think, right? It's not an arms race of who can produce the most stuff, because we're not trying to produce stuff. We're trying to provide services, and we do that very well. Okay, so first of the, oh, look at that lighting shift whenever the white light got off the screen. Ooh, I look way cooler now. Yes, this is a bomber jacket, don't worry. Factors of production. All right. So this is a first of a lot of things that I like to make fun of economics as a subject for. Economics is chock full of words and phrases that are way more complicated than they need to be. Things that have a very specific name that could just be called something much simpler. Factors of production is your very first one of these. Factors of production are things that use resources. Sorry, they're the resources used in the production of goods and services. Effectively, factors of production are just resources. There are different categories for your resources. I guess that's like a difference, but it's still, if it's a resource, it's a factor of production. It's going to fall under one of these four sort of broad categories, and that'll sort of help us delineate and describe more specifics within each one. But all resources, everything used to make a thing, are a factor of production. Something that factors into your production. Crazy. I apologize for the squeaky chair. First resource, land. Important to mention, not just actual physical land here. We're talking land, water, anything that's naturally occurring. Anything that would be here even if we weren't. So like a cow. Okay? That gets into a weird discussion. Students like, well, Mr. McRitchie, would like cheese be a land thing? Because you actually kind of need people to make cheese. Most food we say is land just to be safe. Okay? Labor. Easy. Important to mention, that's a resource, right? Like, you putting in work to make a thing is going to cost a business money. Like, we actually have to pay our workers in the United States, which is a good thing. That's a win. Okay? So labor is another resource. Yeah, you're familiar with that. It's having a job. Capital. One of the most important words in all of economics, frankly. I came up with the capital goods thing like 2 slides ago. It's coming up here again. Capital, technology, tools, machinery, things that are used to make other things. Okay? That, if you're like underlying any of these of like long-term importance, capital. Capital is the best for long-term growth. Land is temporary, it gets used up and it's gone. Rest in peace, Mother Nature. Labor is temporary because workers live and die, etc. Capital, technology, tools, machinery, that has like a exponential curve in terms of growth. Super good to have that. And the final, random, super weird. People don't always know why it's here. Factor of production is entrepreneurship. It's here to make you spell it. Lots of E's, and there's 4 E's in entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is, you're going to hate that I'm going to say French stuff, but it's je ne sais quoi. It's the je ne sais quoi of business. It's this thing that I don't really know how to put into words, but the idea is it's the ability of an individual leader through innovation, charisma, etc., to achieve past their means. You know, like the phrase, like the sum of all parts is greater than, the sum is greater than adding up all the little parts of, I can't remember the phrase. Basic idea is they can turn what you think is going to make like a $10 million into a thing that makes $20 million through some cool new idea. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, if we're sticking in DFW where I'm recording from, Mark Cuban, owner of the Mavericks, Shark Tank, all that stuff. That's all entrepreneurship stuff. So I'll give you some more detailed explanations for these, plus an additional vocab term. Every single factor of production has something called a factor payment. It's the specific term for when you're paying for these things. So sticking with land, all natural resources. I'll make myself tiny for this. Okay, all the natural resources, anything that comes from land. The factor payment, the money made off of that resource, is called rent. Because you rent the land. The land is going to sort of exist without you, whatever. You're renting. So that is kind of obvious. Labor, you actually understand. Labor, probably don't need to write down the definition for. It's any effort that you're getting paid for. If you're getting paid for a job, it's labor. Cool. The income made off of labor, a word you should be familiar with, is wages. The minimum wage is the minimum amount of payment you have to give to labor. Right? Paying somebody for work, cool. That has to be the minimum wage. It's the pay for that resource. Capital, an asset that can improve productivity, is like the best word for it. It's something that helps you produce things. Sorry, I'm going to make myself bigger again. There are 2 types you've got to be aware of. Physical capital, which is a man-made resource. Technology, tools, machinery is sort of that. Okay, if it's a thing we've made to help us make more things, that's physical capital. So tools, technology, machinery, etc. Plastic is a good example of kind of a complicated thing. Computers, obviously useful for this stuff. Software, great for that. Human capital is this other word that people tie into labor a lot of the time, but is explicitly mentioned here. Human capital are all of your knowledge and skills. A way to think about this is when you're going to college, you're not improving your labor, because you can do work if you go to college or not. Like, that doesn't change your ability to do work. When you're going to college, what you're doing is you're acquiring more human capital, an extra thing that the business has to pay you for. Okay? A lot of businesses have requirements for things like a college diploma or a master's degree. Well, okay, they're not asking for a minimum amount of labor because people can do work. They're asking for a certain bare minimum of capital that you have. Money made off of capital is called interest. That is super weird and confusing. I hate that. It's one of those things that I'm like, you guys could just pick a different word, couldn't you? You don't have to make it the same word that'll have to tie into like interest rates and loans and a whole bunch of other complicated stuff in the course. Nope, okay. Great. Lots of GIFs on this PowerPoint. This is the PowerPoint that I figured out how to embed GIFs into. And the last one, there's Mark Cuban. Entrepreneurship. Ability to innovate, discover new ways of utilizing resources, forward with the... Oh my god, I'm about to like cough and or sneeze, and I can't tell which. Nope, it was just a cough. We're okay. Oh my god, it's blood. I have the consumption. No, we're fine. So, big thing they do, entrepreneurs are sort of like the quarterback of the football team where they get all the blame and the glory. They're the ones that take the initiative and end up taking some level of risk involved. They innovate, and if things go great, awesome. They get heralded as heroes or geniuses. Bill Gates, Henry Ford, Cuban, Steve Jobs. And they also act as the risk bearer. If anything ever goes wrong, then they're the ones that get made fun of. And the word for what they make is profit. So money made off of the sale of entrepreneurship is profit. Profit's just revenue minus cost. This does not come up as much in macro. It comes up a lot in AP Micro. So if you're watching these videos for AP Micro tips, that is going to come up a freaking ton in micro. Macro, this is about all you have to worry about for profit, because we don't talk about individual transactions like that in macro. Cool. Quick tiny bit of an example of how much this is. So quickly look through this sentence, this 2 paragraphs, this quick little scenario, and try to identify all of the factors of production. Try and be like, okay, that's a bit of labor, that's a bit of land, that's a bit of capital, that's some entrepreneurship sprinkled in. Just try and see how many different things goes into making a pizza and getting a pizza delivered to your door. Pause the video and go. Unpausing the video. Look at that. That's a whole freaking bunch of words. Okay. Telephone, that's capital, physical capital. Owner, entrepreneurship or labor, depends on how you want to classify it. Entered it, that is the physical act of labor. Labor is a verb. It's work you're doing that you're getting paid for. Computer, that's physical capital. Chief baker, chief makes me think it's a little bit of entrepreneurship there. Could be labor also. The monitor, that is capital. Kitchen is also capital. The kitchen didn't just magically appear. The business has to pay for that. The cooks, more labor. The cook was mixing. They're getting paid to do that, so that's some labor. Salt, flour, eggs, and milk. We're going to call all of that land, even though, like, salt, it does exist without us, but, like, doesn't, like, milk exists without us, but, like, it's fine. Washing their hands, that's labor. Sink, that's capital. Prepare, that's labor. Tomato sauce, cheese, and sausage. Okay, this one is like 3 things that definitely need us to be involved to make it. I'm still going to call it land because it's food. Pizza's in the oven. Okay, that's capital. Cardboard box is still capital. Delivery person is labor. Car is capital. Delivered is labor. Holy crap, that's a lot of things. Yeah, basically what this is telling you is look at all the things that business is paying for. Right, the business is paying for each of these things. They're paying you to mix the dough. They're paying you to wash your hands. You might not think of it like that because you're getting paid the minimum wage and you're like, this is annoying. It's like, yeah, but on the list of things that you're expected to do, you're getting paid for all of that. All those actions are things you're being paid for. All of these ingredients the business has to pay for. All this technology, tools, machinery, capital, the business has to pay for. They all factor into the production. Yeah, great. Cool, next thing. Circular flow model. Disclaimer time. I'm here to yell at you to make you more interested in what's about to happen. The circular flow model, while a very, very boring thing, is one of the most important things in Unit 1, if only because, man, it's the thing students mess up the most. It's the thing that goes in your ear and out your other ear faster than anything else in this entire unit. It's the stuff that on-test questions absolutely traumatizes and murders students. I'm going to just tell you straight up right now. There will be like at least 3 questions on our test that are circular flow model questions. people will probably average like 40% on those 3 questions. It's just how this goes. It's not because it's hard. It's because people don't pay too close of attention to what I'm saying, but it's sort of like, oh, okay, I get it, and then they move on. Write down what I say. Listen very carefully. Focus, focus, focus. Okay. So, background stuff you need to know. In economics, we use lots of models, lots of graphs, a terrifying amount of graphs, actually. An amount of graphs that is going to make you very angry with how a graph looks. We also use some visual models like this one to sort of give us a very simple visual run-through of a complex behavior, to give us a nice and easy looking thing. This model shows something very important. And here is sort of your very simple version of what the circular flow model is. The circular flow model is a model of where the money goes in an economy. Okay, it shows the flow of money within your economy. And it flows in a circle. And you're like, what do you mean in a circle? Because it flows from businesses to consumers in the form of wages, and it flows from those consumers back to those businesses in the form of prices and buying goods from your businesses, right? You buy stuff from a business, they use that money to pay their workers, who then use that money to pay for stuff from a business, on and on and on and on and on. There's your simple explanation. More complicated. It uses 2 markets to do this. It's that same idea, but it's going to show it through 2 markets, the product market and the factor market. Markets are any sort of place where buyers and sellers are interacting. It doesn't have to be a physical place. It can be digital. It can be theoretical. Okay, it's just interaction with buyers and sellers. The product market is the market for goods. So like you going to Walmart to buy a sponge. And the factor market is the market for resources. This is much more theoretical. Like whenever you're applying for a job, you are engaging in the factor market. Okay, you are trying to find someone to buy what you're selling, and what you're selling is your labor. Weird to think about, but whenever you're applying for a job, you are effectively selling yourself, and what they're paying you as a wage is the price of your work. Terrifying to think about conceptually, but yeah. Okay, so here is the circular flow model in as simple version as I can make it. Boy, howdy, is that bright on my screen. So, we've got the factor market up here, the product market down there, businesses over here, households over here. You might see the word businesses written as firms. That's fine, that's still a business. So, right, businesses/firms means the same thing. You're seeing 2 circles, actually, although there's squares on this because I made it square, but they're circular. There are 2 sort of cycles going on, the yellow one and the red one. They're not always yellow and red, it's just on this visual that they are, don't worry about it. The yellow one is money. Oh, sorry. The yellow one is money. Households give money to businesses. Businesses give money to households. For what? The stuff in red. Households give businesses money for goods. Trying to do that in my head real quick. Yes, that makes sense. We buy stuff from businesses. You're all with me on that, right? Great. Businesses give us money for resources. Most obviously labor and entrepreneurship, right? Those are things you actually have. Human capital also, your knowledge and skills. Those are all resources where it's very obvious that the household has it at first. Land, most of the time, starts off as being owned by an individual and then sold to a larger entity like the government or a corporation. So that also applies there. Physical capital, it's fine. I mean, it doesn't. That one's not doesn't always fit this bill as well. But most resources fit this idea of starts at a household, sold to a business, business pays for that resource. Most obviously, labor and wages. What do you have to be able to tell from this model? 1, it's a codependent relationship. Businesses rely on households to buy their products. Households rely on businesses for jobs and income. 2, you have to be cognizant of the fact that each market has buyers and sellers. So there are buyers and sellers in the product market and buyers and sellers in the factor market. You've got to be able to figure out who's buying and who's selling in which market. In the market for goods and services, the product market, it's kind of easy to figure that out, right? We buy goods from businesses. So in the product market, households are the buyers and businesses are the sellers, right? They sell goods to us, we buy goods from them, so we're the buyers, they're the sellers. In the factor market, that dynamic is actually flipped. In the factor market, they're the buyer. They're paying you for your labor. Cool. They're buying your labor. They're buying and you're selling. So in the factor market, the households actually sell and the businesses buy. That is different and usually worth writing down because students tend to forget that very quickly. That in the factor market, households are the buyers and businesses or firms are the sellers. Sorry, water real quick. So here are sort of the questions that I've seen on the AP exam very often. Who controls the factors of production in that model? Who controls them? I would say households initially because they're the ones that control the amounts of them. But ultimately, businesses have the most say. Like, you having your labor is super cool, but some of you guys don't have jobs right now, right? Cool. And some people want jobs and don't have them. They've got their labor, they're willing to give it, and no one wants to buy it. So who really controls the factors of production? I would say firms. And most AP exam questions agree with me that firms ultimately control the factors of production because they control the amounts of them to utilize, right? Having all of this labor is super cool and chill, but, doesn't super matter if businesses don't want it. If you see me look over here, it's because I have two monitors and I'm actively checking on how the screen looks. I'm sorry if I haven't explained that yet. Buyers and sellers, I already mentioned this one, just said it like 2 seconds ago, but let's see if you forgot already. Who are the buyers and sellers in the factor market? Who's buying, who's selling? In the factor market, the buyer is the businesses and the seller are the consumers because we sell our factors of production, like labor, to the businesses. In the product market, consumers buy, businesses sell. That is something you're familiar with. Cool. Now, transitioning. It's just a transition into the opportunity cost thing. Oh boy, I'm going to get so friggin' tiny for this slide. This slide's got a lot of text on it. These are not things that are test questions, so don't freak out about writing them. Just be aware that these are things that we assume in economics to be true to help keep things simple. These are not factually accurate all of the time, but they are things we have to assume to limit the amount of variables we deal with, because this is macro 1, not macro 6. Some of you guys are like in English 5. Cool, you can do really complicated stuff in English 5 that you wouldn't have done in English 1. Great, this is economics 1. So first assumption, society wants a whole bunch but can't get everything, right? We can't always get what we want. Why? Scarcity. Because things are limited, you can't always get what you want. I can't use the same water for cleaning dishes as I would for drinking. One, that's gross, but also because it goes away and it's not unlimited. Because of scarcity, we have to choose, and that comes into what economics is all about, is choices. And every single choice has a particular cost. You're always giving up something. There's a phrase in economics called "there's no such thing as a free lunch." The idea being, whenever you choose to do something, you are giving up other options, other things you could have done. Those are also things that are a cost. Your other options that you've given up are also a thing you have to think about. They're trade-offs. Third thing, important, because this is not a real life thing all the time. This is not always true, but it is in this class. Everyone's goal is to make choices that maximize their own level of satisfaction. Everyone acts in their own self-interest, okay? We assume people to be selfish. We assume people to be cognizant of what they need to do to take care of themselves and not necessarily others. Selflessness is a variable and one that is very, very, very hard to quantify. So it's much easier to assume that nobody is selfless and then to reckon with the consequences of that than to try to calculate how selfless on average people are. Very tricky. 4. Everyone makes decisions by weighing the marginal cost and marginal benefit. We'll get to that in a second. And real-life situations can be explained and analyzed through models and graphs. So we've already hit on that when we looked at the circular flow model. We're going to focus on 3, 4, and 2 here for the remainder of the lecture. We are almost done, but we're getting there. So, focusing on choice. Oh, that looks really tiny. Let's fix that real quick. There we go. So, choosing. Economics is the study of choices. How do we choose? Assumption 4 kind of told us that. It is you choose based on weighing marginal benefit and marginal cost. A rational choice, or behaving rationally or logically, is to choose a thing in which the marginal benefit of that decision exceeds or equals the marginal cost. What you're gaining is equal to or greater than what you're giving up. If it's equal to what you're giving up, it's an even trade, so you would do it. If it's greater than, you're benefiting, so hell yeah, you would do the thing. To clarify what marginal and cost and benefit mean, marginal cost is the cost of a 1 unit increase in an activity. Could be phrased as what you give up in return for something. An example of the 1 unit increase would be like, If the choice you're making is whether or not to study for a test, the marginal cost is most likely time, right? The amount of time you have to give up in order to do that studying, okay? Say you've got a test tomorrow and it's like 9 p.m. and you're thinking about studying before you go to bed. Okay, so your cost there is hours that you could be spending sleeping or whatever, okay? The benefit, the marginal benefit, is how much better you're going to do on that test. The 1 unit increase would be per hour of studying, right? So for every hour of studying, I'm losing an hour of sleep, but I'm gaining, if you could quantify it, let's say it's like 5 points on the test. Is that a worthwhile deal for you? Maybe, maybe not. If it is, awesome. If it's not, gotta think about it. So marginal benefit is what you're getting in return. Could be tangible, like the idea of the gain you're getting off that test, the actual percentage. Could be savings, say that the idea is choosing whether or not to buy a particular product. The marginal benefit there could be how much you were willing to spend on that product, and the cost would be the actual cost. Say I go to the Gap to buy a shirt, and I'm willing to spend $30 on a button-up, and it's $25 for the button-up. Cool. I'm going to buy the shirt, right? Because the benefit is exceeding the cost. I'm going to be gaining $5 in a weird way, right? Now, a weird sort of addendum to put onto this is that as you consume more and more of a thing consecutively, the marginal benefit for it decreases with each consumption. Basically, you're gaining less and less of a thing the more you do it. This is like when you're studying, you stop studying at a certain point, right? You don't study forever. That would be insane, because at some point, the cost exceeds the benefit. It's not the cost that's rising, because it's still an hour the whole time, but the benefit is starting to deteriorate, and once the benefit dips below the cost, you stop doing the thing. I also refer to this as the 20-piece or 10-piece McNugget rule, depending on how much shame you have capacity for. Because when you start eating McNuggets, you're like, cool, I'm hungry, these are fine. But by the time you get to the 10th or 20th, if you eat that many in one sitting, you probably start to regret it in terms of like, this is like paste made from like rando chicken parts. Sort of like look at it a little more carefully, like, I don't really want to keep eating these. Because you stop at a certain point, right? Now, a nice way to sort of put a pin in this is marginal benefit and marginal cost are really incentives. Rewards and penalties that are encouraging or discouraging you to do things. An example of this would be like cheating in a class, right? If the choice is whether or not to cheat, I can do one of two things to prevent you from cheating. I can change the marginal cost, the penalty for cheating, or I can change the marginal benefit, the reward for cheating. And you're like, the reward for cheating? It's like, well, yeah, you get something from cheating, right? There's a reason why people do it. It's because they score better if they cheat, right? Or at least they think they will. So what do I do to help prevent that? Well, a way to reduce the benefit of cheating is to do things like giving each person different test questions, right? Harder to cheat if you have different test questions or if your questions are in a different order, right? Or to watch you more carefully. All of those things decrease the benefit. You're gaining less positive out of it. The cost is the same. I didn't change the penalty for cheating at all. I just made it less positively incentivized to do the thing. Changing the cost would be changing the penalty. So if I said, if I catch you cheating, I kick you out of this class. You go down to on level, do not pass go, do not collect $200, you go straight to on level. Or I email your college that you're applying to, let them know that you were actively cheating in an AP class, and then that my recommendation is to remove your acceptance. That would be pretty friggin' harsh of me to do. It would be increasing the marginal cost by quite a lot, right? That would be pretty wild, but would definitely probably stop a lot of you guys from cheating. You're like, if he catches me, I might not go to college now. So, no, not going to risk that, right? Those are just me playing with the incentives, playing with the reward and the penalty for an activity. Penalty being the cost, because that's the downside. Reward being the benefit, because it's the upside. So here is an example of that savings idea. Let me move myself over here. So the movie example doesn't work as well because of COVID, so you probably don't want to go to the movies a whole lot. But go back in time to when movies were a thing you could go to relatively easily and not have to worry about COVID and stuff. Here's an example of marginal benefit, marginal cost in making a decision in that situation. So the benefit here is how much you'd be willing to give up to see the movie. So say it's a movie that you are very, very, very excited for seeing. What would have been a good example of that? Like Avengers is probably a good example of that, like the last Avengers movie, right? So you're willing to spend $30 to see it. Like if you went to the movies and they told you it's $30, you wouldn't be like, ugh, I'm not gonna go see the movie now. You'd be reluctant, but you'd still be willing to do it, right? So the benefit is how much you'd be willing to spend. The cost is how much it actually is. So first time, hell yes, I would see this movie, right? I'm weighing the benefit and the cost. The benefit exceeds the cost. You bet I'm going to see this movie the first time. The question is, would you see this movie 3 times? Would you? How do we look at this? Well, marginal analysis is all about looking at it individually, step by step. You don't do sum total, you do individual decisions. So first time would I see the movie? Yes. Second time would I see the movie? 15-10? Yes. Third time would I see the movie? No. Right? I'd only be willing to see the movie if it was $5. It's still 10. Yeah, I'm good, bud. Even though the overall total has the benefit outweighing the cost, I wouldn't guarantee do it because that's not marginal. Marginal is incremental. It is individual times. So the first time is fine, the second time is fine, but the third time it is not. So I would not be doing, logically, I would not go see this movie 3 times. If I see it twice, I'm benefiting by a total of $25. If I see it 3 times, I'm only benefiting by a total of $20. That's not as good. I should only see the movie twice. That's the idea of marginal analysis. It comes up more micro than macro, just be aware of it. Okay. Last thing, home stretch, guys. We've almost made it. I know it's a long lecture, but it's the first one, so we got to do it. Opportunity cost. All right. So, in every decision you make, this is going to stress. This might stress you out, depending on how easily you get stressed out. In every single decision you make, there is another underlying cost that is often not thought of in the same weighted category as marginal cost, right? Because marginal cost, there is almost always some real obvious nature to it. If I want to do this, I have to give up this. Okay. There is something called the opportunity cost you have to think of as well, which is quite simply the next best thing you could have done. I choose to, if there's a fork in the woods, I go to on the right. What did I give up? The left. I gave up that opportunity. I gave up that option. I gave up my highest valued alternative, my second best option. Your opportunity cost is whenever you make a decision, the thing you would have done had you not done what you chose to do is your opportunity cost. You can also reference it as the benefit you could have had if you had chosen your second option. Okay, if I had gone that route, what would I have gained off of it? I gave that up. Oh boy. So examples, going out versus staying in. If those are the 2 things you're really weighing and you choose to stay in, the opportunity cost, what you gave up by staying in, is the ability to go out. You did give up that opportunity, and that could include benefits like social interaction. It could also include bad things like risking getting to a car accident or terrifying stuff, right? Studying for a test versus going to a sporting event like football games back in first semester. Yeah, very obvious opportunity cost there. I choose to do this, I'm giving up this. I choose to do this, I'm giving up that. It's very important to clarify here, though. Opportunity cost is, 1, subjective. It is your highest valued alternative. It is 1, subjective, and 2, it's going to emphasize number 1 more, entirely based on what your second option is. So if you're thinking about going to the football game and you've got a test tomorrow, if the second thing you would do is a different option, say I would go to the football game, or if I wasn't at the football game, I'd probably just play video games for the rest of the night and then go to bed at 3 a.m. Cool. That's your opportunity cost going to the football game, not studying for the test. It's whatever your second best option is, whatever you would have done had you not done the thing you chose to do. College, workforce, etc. The idea is that every time you make a choice, it is costing you an opportunity. So example, say you, individual viewer of this video, have enough money to go to either Wendy's or Whataburger, okay, 2 fast food restaurants after school, okay? If you choose to go to Whataburger, what is your opportunity cost? Well, if it's just choosing between these 2 options, my opportunity cost is Wendy's, right? I gave up the ability to have gone to Wendy's. I gave up what I could have gotten there. the 5 for 5 or whatever you're going to get at Wendy's, right? If you choose Wendy's, your opportunity cost is Whataburger. When there's only two choices, opportunity cost is very simple. It's the other thing, because we know the preference, right? There's either this or this. You choose A or B. If I choose A, I gave up B. But what if there's more than that? What if you open it up to a bunch of restaurants? Wendy's, Whataburger, McDonald's, Popeyes, Chick-fil-A. Those are all options for you, and you pick one of them. What's your opportunity cost? Is it every other restaurant? No, I don't think so. It's your second best option. So what is your second best option? This is when that preference thing comes into play. So if we're going off of me, my rankings here would be Whataburger 1, Chick-fil-A 2, Wendy's 3, Popeyes 4, McDonald's 5. Depends on where the Popeyes is. If Popeyes is over here, but it's probably not very good. So Popeyes 4, McDonald's 5. So if I choose to go to Whataburger, my opportunity cost is Chick-fil-A, because that's where I would have gone had I not gone to Whataburger. That is my second option. It is not every other restaurant, because if you say that my opportunity cost is every other restaurant, what you mean is, if he didn't go to Whataburger, he would go to Wendy's, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, and Popeyes. He'd go to all 4 restaurants. No, I would not do that. That seems pretty excessive. I would not go and make that much of an effort for lunch. That seems kind of crazy to me. So the opportunity cost is always the second option. The thing to understand and to write down here is, if presented with more than 2 choices, you have to know preferences to know opportunity cost. If you're presented with more than 2 options, A, B, C, D, E, for example, you need to know preferences to know the opportunity cost, because opportunity cost is their second choice, not every other thing they could have done. It is the thing they would have done had they not chosen the path they initially chose. Cool. That is it. That's the first real lecture for this unit, for this, I'm going to make a darker screen color here. Yeah, it's better. That is our first video for the second semester that I'm recording this, but this is the first sort of like remote learning lecture. That is a whole bunch of very, very basic, fundamental, underlying things for economics. That probably felt fairly slow and pretty boring, I'm sure. That's okay. We're not going to go down that hole very often. It's just I have to kind of condense a lot of the vocab, and that's a lot of very introductory stuff, so it makes sense to do it very early. The next thing we are going to cover is going to be kind of important. It'll be the first graph of the course, the production possibilities curve. Easiest graph, love that, but it is the first one of, spoiler here, many. So make sure you understand those 3 big concepts off of today's lessons. The factors of production, land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. These are resources. The circular flow model. You need to know what it looks like. If you didn't draw it in your notes, it's a good idea to draw that and go back in the video and draw that thing in your notes. It's very useful to have, especially with all the labels. It's very nice to know it. The outer ring is money, inner ring is stuff. Okay. And finally, opportunity cost. Okay, making decisions requires marginal benefit of marginal cost, but additionally there's this opportunity cost, this other thing you are giving up whenever you make any choice. That is the thing you could have done if you didn't do the thing that you did. Lots of pronoun game there, and like follow the logic for a little bit, okay? But that is it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching, and keep check eye on the channel to see if you can see when the next video comes up. If you want to subscribe, go ahead. Feel free to leave a like, and if you've got questions over anything in that video, throw them in the comments below. I check this all the time. I'll respond to you best I can. Thank you very much, guys.